story of the good, the bad, and the ugly learning how to survive and navigate an impossible apocalyptic wasteland.
Pretty great? Pretty great. Not bad.
Alright, let's do this. The Fallout franchise began in 1997 with the release of the first game, Fallout, a post-nuclear role-playing game by Interplay Productions. It had then produced multiple sequels and spin-off games, all receiving positive reviews. And now the current owners of the franchise, Bethesda Softworks, have produced a TV drama in the same universe as the games. Is the show good? Is it bad? Is it lore accurate? Is it better than Halo? So I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring and address the good, bad, and ugly qualities of the show. Also, I want to make a quick disclaimer, as I have very little experience with the original games, and had to do most of my research through lore videos and wiki entries, so if I get some details wrong, I do apologize, and you're welcome to correct me in the comments. Though, to make things fair, the research sources I used were made before the show's air date, as both Bethesda and the show have actively retconned certain events in the month since the premiere. Anyway, that's enough gas bagging. Here's Fallout, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The Ghoul is the most consistent and entertaining character in the show, and Walter Goggins does a good job in distinguishing his pre- and post-war self. The set design and the props are well made, and it looks like it comes straight out of the game. In fact, the general vibe and feeling matches the game's. The soundtrack is pretty solid, and the end credit sequences nailed the theme. Whoever designed them understood the assignment.
You smell good.
What? You want to have sex?
You mean use my cock?
Yeah.
Lucy is written to be Ned Flanders in the Wasteland, a kind-hearted optimist in a world of death and greed who eventually must push her morality aside so that she can survive. An interesting concept. The problem is she maintains this optimism even though the events that transpire in chronological order don't sync with her on-screen development. The best example is her interactions with Maximus and the Ghoul. Lucy helps prevent the Ghoul becoming feral even though she witnessed him shoot an unarmed man and gun down an entire town, dunking her in irradiated water to bait a gupper, cutting off her finger, and selling her off for her organs to be harvested. Lucy does this because she wants to prove to the Ghoul and herself that she can maintain her morality in the wasteland. The very next episode, she is willing to let Maximus die in his immobilized suit due to her not trusting him, even though the last time they interacted, Maximus was taking multiple bullets protecting Lucy from the Ghoul. Her character development doesn't have a linear progression. Maximus is a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, and the incarnation of failing upward. Maximus starts out as an underdog who wants to live up to the idea of being a knight, but how he gets there is nonsensical. After his friend is promoted to squire and gets stabbed in the foot, Maximus admits to the superiors that though he didn't do it, he wanted it to happen. Maximus is then promoted to squire. After a lethal encounter with a mutant, Maximus allows Knight Titus to die from radiation poisoning because he was threatened with death. Maximus then assumes Titus's identity and takes his power armor. He later obstructs the mission of finding pre-war tech by giving the cleric a fake head and says that only he knows where the real one is. Maximus is then put on the mission to raid the enemy base. After he's believed to have killed Moldova, he becomes a knight himself. Maximus's very progression is a clear display that the writers do not understand how a military operates or what they expect from their soldiers, as none of Maximus's actions have any real negative consequences. No competent military leader would ever give a soldier who wishes harm on his comrades or lets them die any kind of authority. At best, they'd be court-martialed, at worst, executed for treason. Moldova is introduced as a raider, which is in keeping with the tactics and brutality that a crew shows the Vault Dwellers. The Surface Dwellers have a great deal of fear at the very mention of her name, and some even revere her as a religious figure, while covering themselves in blood and ashes. Yet she is revealed to be part of the New California Republic, and is trying to bring free energy to the wasteland. Lucy's father, Hank, is the overseer of their vault, who is willing to let multiple people die, including a pregnant woman, just to save his daughter and yet it is revealed later that he is actually part of a Vault experiment to repopulate the wasteland through selective breeding, and nuked an entire city with his wife in it because she took his children away and he wanted to destroy the NCR?
I am not making this shit up!
The main issue for both these characters is that for a twist to be good, it doesn't just surprise the audience, it must be consistent with what we've seen so far in the story, so that when we watch the scenes for a second time knowing the full context, it doesn't contradict anything we've seen. If Moldava knows the truth behind the vaults, why are her subordinates killing all the vault dwellers? They're not all in on the scheme and might actually help her if they found out their leader killed his own wife and thousands of other innocent people. And why would she try to kill Lucy? She knows who Lucy is. Why would Hank risk his mission to save his only daughter when he killed his own wife to ensure its success? Their motivations don't match up with their previous behavior. The writers clearly just want to make shock value without putting in the legwork to make the narrative feel consistent. Also, quick writing tip, if you want your audience to sympathize with a villain, be mindful of how much harm they cause and be upfront with why they are doing it. Neither the audience or characters are going to respect or empathize with someone whose first instinct is brutality. At least normal people don't. And another thing, how the fuck is Moldava alive after 200 years? I know she's not a ghoul. Did she find a stasis pod somewhere? If this Moldava is descended from that Moldava, how does she know what cold fusion is? Also, Vault-Tech's objective makes no sense. They claim that their mission was to stop all war by removing all the factions and thus can control the world and rebuild it from scratch. So they were the ones that dropped the bomb. The whole thing is some half-hearted critique on capitalism being the greatest evil. However, anyone who knows anything about capitalism knows that in order for the rich to be rich, people must be able to buy the things you're selling, which means they need products, currency, trade lines, and infrastructure, all of which would be destroyed if nuclear bombs were to drop in America. Vault-Tec even had access to cold fusion, an unlimited power source during a time when America was going to war over resources. They could have made trillions from every country in the world.
Why make trillions when we could make billions?
A trillion is more than a billion, numbnuts.
Which leads to the argument that defenders of this show seem to always make. It's satire, don't take it too seriously. My retort to this is, I don't think satire means what you think it means. For those who don't know, satire is used to critique and expose flaws in society, culture, and politics using humor, irony, and exaggeration. Some subjects may be critiqued harsher, so the narrative will have a dark, tragic tone, or be a fusion of the two. But mainly satire makes you think about the subject they're featuring. It isn't just, capitalism is bad, discrimination is bad, because my narrative says these things, it doesn't adhere to the standards of other narratives. Satires are still works of fiction that are subject to criticism. If the subject is funny, the jokes must be funny. If the subject is serious, the narrative must be serious. The Boys is a great example, as it satirizes the superhero genre, how studios are pushing for interconnected universes or pandering to SJWs. But the show still puts in the effort to make the narrative cohesive and give the characters, both heroes and villains, depth, agency, and believable progression. The message stays in the background, and the story is center frame.
War never changes. You look out at this wasteland, looks like chaos. But there's always somebody behind the wheel.
Did you think every battle in history was all part of some big old conspiracy? Bullshit!
Imagine the writers of the Fallout and Halo shows were students writing an essay. The guy who wrote Halo is the kid who only gets his research from secondhand sources and makes up the rest, while the guy who writes Fallout is the kid who pulls doors that say push. They completely botched the lore and didn't even have the decency to make their own continuity to fit their fanfiction. Though they put in effort to give the audience Easter eggs and member berries, any real knowledge from the game's lore contradicts the show. The theme, War Never Changes, was never about there being some conspiracy to every conflict. War Never Changes refers to the idea that there will always be conflict between people, no matter the reason.
The Romans waged war to gather slaves and wealth. Spain built an empire from its lust for gold and territory. Hitler shaped a battered Germany into an economic superpower. But war never changes.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was stated in Fallout 2 it was the Chinese that dropped the bomb because they were losing the war and would rather destroy the world than surrender. Vault-Tec dropping the bomb was only a fan theory. There's also a theory it was aliens, but the Chinese is more probable as they had more investment in America's destruction. Either way, it never really mattered who dropped the bomb first. What mattered is that it did, and the survivors are left in the fallout their ancestors left them.
He said it! He said it!
This then leads to settlements being formed, factions being made, and the player character must navigate them to complete their objective. Whether it's finding a water chip, finding their father, finding their son, or getting revenge on Chandler Bing.
The game was rigged from the start.
Rest in peace, mate. Tim Kaine, the co-creator of Fallout, stated that Vault-Tec originally wanted to use the vaults to prep survivors for multi-generational spacefaring journeys, as they viewed the Earth as a lost cause and wanted to start anew. Bethesda retconned this and simply stated they were for social experiments that were deemed too unethical while the government was still in power. Vault-Tec are bad people, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying there's no logical reason for Vault-Tec dropping the bombs. The show says that in order to make money, Vault-Tec had to have some insurance that the bombs would drop. But the truth is, they just needed people to think that they would drop to make money. How else would they get the resources necessary to build over 100 vaults and get people to buy spots in them? Also, the plotline of a secret cabal of high-ranking individuals dictating America's future and taking over the wasteland through mass genocide and social Darwinism was stolen from the Enclave. And they have nothing to do with Vault-Tec. The Enclave were what remained of the US government. The Brotherhood of Steel is a post-war faction of the best warriors in the Wasteland, whose purpose is to collect and regulate the uses of pre-war technology to prevent a second apocalypse by evil factions, like the Enclave. We're also having a massive disdain for mutants as their founder discovered they were made in unethical experiments by the government to be super soldiers in the war against China. The Brotherhood are now relegated to being a simple villain faction with cowardly, incompetent soldiers who die quicker than stormtroopers. And since the Brotherhood hates mutants, why didn't Maximus start slaughtering the Vault 4 dwellers? They clearly hate surface dwellers and were seen hauling Lucy against her will. That vault should have been covered in blood by the time they left, misunderstanding or no. Shady Sands was originally a small settlement run by the NCR. Then after the events of Fallout 1, it brought in other settlements to become a city built on the ruins of the old structures. The NCR had been running for about a century and even won a conflict against the Brotherhood of Steel. Shady Sands had access to power, food, technology, and the promise that society could be rebuilt in the wasteland. And it all got nuked off screen.
Again! No making this shit up!
The reason this annoys me is that the destruction of Shady Sands was used in a similar way to how Disney broke down the New Republic and Luke Skywalker. Instead of witnessing the new world the old heroes worked so hard to make and inventing new challenges that the new heroes would have to deal with, it gets hit with the Control Z. The universe then returns to the previous setting instead of taking it to a new place. The writers blew up Shady Sands because they wanted to have the wasteland be back to how the games begin. But if that's the case, they might as well have just made the show its own continuity or set it in a different region of America. Like I said, pull stores that say push. Honestly, it's probably out of hubris rather than a lack of intelligence. While we're talking about factions, there's a lot less moral ambiguity in the show than in the games. One of the reasons the games have so much replayability is due to the effort put into developing each faction, their beliefs and flaws. It is then up to the player to decide who they wish to join based on what they think is the best course of action. The show, however, throws ambiguity to the wind by the season finale. Moldavia is good, Hank is bad, and the Brotherhood of Steel is corrupt. Maybe Moldavia kills off so many Vault Dwellers because she became more brutal and ruthless after her home got burned. Maybe Hank wants to bring his children to the same world he grew up in, but was forced to choose his mission over them, which is why his wife died. Maybe the reason the Brotherhood of Steel has so many incompetent members could be because they're stretched too thin and have to get as many soldiers in the field as possible. But no, what you see is what you get, and looking any deeper is going to give you pink eye.
Am I ugly? My eyes! My eyes!
The Fallout TV show manages to capture the vibe and aesthetic, but this is mainly used for capturing nostalgia and completely ignores past events that made the franchise so popular. all of which could have been solved with a simple Google search. Though the characters were introduced with their own interesting premises, they are presented as a first draft of a script that needed more revision to be coherent.